¿Cómo vas? ¿Cómo vas con...?
Pues
How's it
encontré
going with the paper?
dos artículos.
Ajá.
Y uno de ellos, bueno, creo que ahí lo puse en la reflexión. Dos. Y ese es el que se me hace un poquito más apegado a lo que yo quería buscar, porque en sí algo como lo que yo quería no había. Bueno,
Si están are the two articles that you found related to what you have currently in the student list here with the first step here with your handout? So you say, I wish to learn more about explicit grammar activities because I want to find out what difficulties teachers and students face after teaching or receiving an implicit grammar class. So let's focus on this. Do you have research questions drafted? Have you written out research questions?
No, the article that I found contains the questionnaire.
Okay.
So I think I can change some questions or use them.
Okay.
And that's why I thought that it was
a good article. Okay, but what about the research questions? So, for example, las preguntas de investigación, si tienes algo desarrollado.
Sí tenía, pero del anterior.
Okay, pero relacionado a...
Con este nuevo no.
Okay. The next step, what we need, Luis, I'm going to open up your Google Drive document. Looks like you have the template here set up. Now, here in this section is where we need to develop our literature review. So I think right now our next step is for you to add your research questions here at the bottom and your thesis statement here, just one sentence that captures the main idea of your literature review. And then start developing your sections. You might start off by including the main topics and the headings here, and then develop each of these sections. Okay, so I think it's time to start writing your literature review, and use whatever you can from the two articles, or if you find more articles. But I think now we need to start developing our literature review. So we have just over 2 weeks to complete this part of the thesis statement, and the only thing I'm still what I need to see are the research questions that are based on what I'm highlighting here. In order to find out what difficulties teachers and students face after teaching and receiving an implicit grammar class, this part of step 1 needs to be more specific, needs to be more related to the actual whatever you're going to examine. So if you have here, I want to find out difficulties, maybe you want to find out how, when, where, with whom, instead of investigating what difficulties, because this just says you're going to be looking at only the difficult. So you are looking for the difficulties. That is part of, but where you want to find out a little bit more. Maybe you want to find out, let's see how teachers overcome teaching and receiving an implicit grammar class. So how teachers implement implicit grammar, right, in an English class, or how do teachers, what materials do teachers use to teach grammar implicitly, or what those are the things we need to be looking at for this part of the step 1. Okay, now this is can come right from some of these primary research articles that you're looking at, right? So do you have any with you today that we can look at? Okay,
but I have it in my USB.
Okay, yeah, let's take a look. Okay.
una carpeta que decía Thesis o así. Esa.
These two?
Ajá. Hasta abajo vienen como los instrumentos que usaron. Bueno, que usó.
Okay. If you look at this, and I'm just looking here at the abstract.
Mm-hmm.
It says here, the study aimed to find out whether there were significant differences in teachers' perceptions and difficulties in relation to their gender, qualification, teaching experience, and the level they teach in school, thus providing insights. Okay. This is the core, this is the main idea of what they were studying. So, for example, if this interests you, if you want to focus, if you want to find out and focus on the significant differences in teacher perceptions based on gender, education, qualifications, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
then come up with research questions. First of all, change this
Mm-hmm.
to reflect what that just said, and then come up with research questions that focus on that, on this, what I just highlighted here. See that?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much what you have up here. The differences, I don't know, researchers debated, yeah, I mean, not so much just what their perceptions are, but this is the aim, right? This is the aim of their study, and if this is something that you want to do, or some part of this, right, that's the level of detail that we need. Okay. So this is certainly a possibility there. Okay.
At the end of that paper,
Uh-huh.
Are the questions or the question?
Yeah, the questionnaire, certainly you can use that. Our first step, though, is to get our purpose of the study right. So everything else, yes, you can use the questionnaire. You can use get some ideas about participants, the procedure. All of that is fair game. You can use that.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, we need to focus on the purpose, on the focus of the direction of your research.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at this one: the utility of implicit learning in teaching of roles. Okay, so now this is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds like a quantitative research study where they set up an experimental group and a control group. And you might be able to get some ideas from here, examples maybe from questionnaires,
Mm-hmm.
or even problems that you want to state, that you want to address. But as far as the actual procedure, we probably won't be able to do this type of research,
Mm-hmm.
simply because we don't have enough time to focus more on the learning, setting up two control group, or a control group and experimental group as they've done here. But it looks like the potential impact of implicit learning, you can use this document in part of your research and literature review. But right now, we need to find maybe one more article, preferably qualitative research.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, that first article looked pretty good as far as being able to, if that's what you want to do, if this is something that interests you in that first article,
Mm-hmm.
you can either duplicate it or get as close as you can to duplicating that research study, but within your own context,
Mm-hmm.
focusing on perceptions, right? So Is that something that you're interested in
Yes.
researching? Okay, so I would modify this section here to bring in the idea or ideas of that other research, the first article that we looked at, and then go to your document in Google Drive and add your research questions here. That's the first thing. Add your research questions here based on this information that I've highlighted. Buenos dias, and add your thesis statement here, which is at the end of your introduction. You don't have to complete the introduction now. I would wait on the introduction until at the end. But go ahead and write your thesis statement here and your research questions here. And remember that the thesis statement is the answer to your research questions, right, in one sentence, right? Everything else that you develop here is developing an argument for support for the thesis statement. So whenever you start developing this section here, the literature review, go to week 2, under modules, week 2, developing an argument, where you'll find a lot of information where I talk about how to develop an argument, premises. There's a very good video here, creating an academic argument. All this is related to how you're going to organize your literature review. So really take some time to look at this and think about how you want to organize all of your work. Find additional books, websites, more articles, right? So to bring in your resources as you develop this, okay? And what I'm suggesting everyone to do here is to add the topics first, these main topics, and then go kind of a type of outline, and then go in and add the text. That way when I go in and look and see each week, look at your progress, I can see how you're organizing your thoughts and your ideas. So I think now's the time to start adding and working in your literature review. We have a deadline of February 28th, so we still have a couple of weeks. Let's see here. Today's the 12th, so we have just over 2 weeks to get this section, the literature review, finished. All right, so do you have any questions or concerns about particularly this section here, the handout? Narrowing your topic, because this is probably the most difficult to do. So do you have any questions about these 4 steps here that we have to complete?
I don't know if the other steps are correct.
All right, so I would look at again this second part in order to, okay, I wish to examine. Now what you wish to examine is going to be very much related to the purpose, that is the research question. So let's go back to, do I still have this up? Oh no. Let me pull up that first article again. Alright, so what you plan to examine, let's just assume that you want to focus on the same information. Alright. What you're going to examine, teacher perceptions. So this is one thing you're going to be observing, teacher perceptions. And perhaps student difficulties. Okay, now student difficulties, you need to decide if those difficulties are going to be coming only from the teacher perspectives, or or difficulties that the students themselves say that they have. So that's something you need to decide.
I think the author asks the teachers about the students' problem.
Okay. All right. So you decide if that's what you want to do, or if you also want to maybe compare teacher perceptions with student perceptions, which is another option, which I think would be interesting too. Ask the teacher what they think the students' difficulties are, but ask the students too to see if they're connected, if they're the same, or maybe not. Maybe they're not the same. Okay, but that's what I would include here and be a little bit more specific. You could say teachers' perspectives on student difficulties in the class, or specific difficulties. What type of difficulties are you? Are we talking about any difficulties or specific difficulties? Okay. So here, this is a fine what you have here, but maybe be more specific. And you don't. You do, like here would be either opinions or perceptions. Probably not both, or probably not attitudes. It's probably one of these. It's attitudes or opinions or perceptions. Based on something, something with regard to the language class, right? My unit of analysis of the individual teacher practices. So here, what I understand this to mean is you're going to focus on doing a case study on one teacher. Is that true?
Is it?
Have you read this other article? What did they do? Did they focus on one teacher? Was it a case study on one teacher, or did they look at various teachers?
I read a little part of the article, and it says that it was, they were 2 or 3, I don't remember.
Okay.
But I thought that because it was like, or there's not a lot of time, I just needed to focus on one.
Well, I think because we're focusing on teacher perspectives, I think we can look at more teachers. Yeah, I think we can do a case study, kind of a multiple case study, but based on case study on each teacher. And because essentially what you're just there's not going to be we'll have to talk later about how we're going to observe classes and how you're not going to observe classes, but try to direct your questions around some aspect of a class, of implicit grammar in this case, where you might be able to also observe these different practices. So maybe it's the perceptions of implicit grammar versus how students feel about implicit grammar. But thinking about perceptions, implicit grammar, and perhaps both the teacher perspective and the student perspective, and then your own observation that you see when you look at implicit grammar and how it's taught. I think that would be a good topic. It's narrow enough, and you can focus on maybe 2 to 3 teachers, and observe each one for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and look at how they're, and also plan time for interviews, right? You might do some focus groups, and we can look at later narrowing down how we're going to collect the data, but I think step 3 you might consider more than one teacher, and it would be like case study. So I would modify step 3 and step 2 and look at the second part of step 1 here, where it talks about your research questions. Okay. So go ahead and change that. Go ahead and begin uploading your information. So if next session, we can, I'll look at what you have so far at that point and make suggestions about the organization of your thesis. Okay. Any other questions, concerns?
No.
All right, and also don't forget the reflection that's due on Sunday. And you can do that anytime. You can do that anytime this week. Okay. All right. So let me close this down. All right. Okay, Luis. We'll see you next week. You're welcome. Have a good week.
You too.
All right. See ya.
See you, teacher.